Hi, and welcome to this Advisor Firm Ecosystem of 2025 webinar, kindly hosted by the Embark platform. My name is Heather Hopkins, Managing Director of NextWealth, and I'm really pleased to have a fantastic panel to talk about the Advisor Firm ecosystem. I've got Pete Docherty, the CEO of Embark platform, Tessa Lee, Managing Director of moneyinfo, Chet Velani, the Managing Director of EV, formerly known as eValue, and Felicia Meyerowitz Singh, co-founder and CEO of Akoni. Welcome. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and provide a 1 minute or less description of what does an API mean to you. And I'm really looking forward to finding out what an API means. So Tessa, if I could start with you, please.
Yeah, hi, hello everybody. My name is Tessa Lee from moneyinfo. We supply client portal technology and apps branded for financial advice firms, for wealth managers and TFMs to help them to communicate securely with their clients, to aggregate all of their clients' financial information, and to automate and make their business processes more efficiently. And one of the things we do a lot is connecting with other technologies to bring in data from lots of different parties, from platforms and providers and CRMs and back offices and all sorts of different systems. So to me, really, I guess, what is an API? In simple terms, it's just a way to let products and services communicate with each other. I guess it's effectively like a contract between two different systems that allows you to share information. It makes us all more open as systems, and it allows businesses, most importantly, to pick and choose the systems and services and tools that they want to use that fit for their business. It opens up access to things whilst maintaining a good security model and control over that information. It facilitates innovation, it expands your reach to more customers or more markets, and it still allows us all to develop our own systems in isolation without having too much of an impact on each other. So APIs are brilliant things. They allow us all to focus on our core competencies whilst offering our customers and our clients choice around the information that they want to share and the systems and businesses that they deal with. So that is, in a nutshell, what an API means to me.
Perfect, thank you. Chet, if I could come to you next, in your own, well, introduce yourself and in your own words, what is an API?
I'm the MD of eValue. My name is Chet Velani, as Heather introduced. And we recently rebranded from eValue, where we've had a bit of a we've been around in the industry for quite some time under eValue, and we're now EV, so a bit more of a modern, updated brand, which is quite an exciting time for us. From a business perspective, we support a range of financial institutions across asset managers, advisor groups, networks, some of the product providers and platforms, to building societies, banks, but also we support other tech providers in supporting their solutions to market. So in terms of what an API means to me, I think Tessa's probably covered it. I'm not sure how I beat that as a response, to be honest with you, Tessa. But I mean, from my perspective, APIs have been around for donkey's years. It's nothing new. And in some ways, it might be a little bit more helpful to understand or use an example of how they're used in real life. And perhaps we can think of an integration between a tool provider, a software provider, and a CRM system. So historically, pre-API, pre-integration, you might have manually had to go and suck that data out of the CRM system, use it in a tool, populate it, and any changes you make, you go back into the CRM system and update it later. An API, in theory, or that integration process, allows you to just, at the click of a button, hopefully have a two-way integration, so you can pull that data through and pass it back. So in theory, what you should get from APIs is a way to remove some of those manual processes, make things far more automated, which should in turn reduce errors and increase speed of the process and increase the speed of the advice process. But I think the other benefit as well, and I think Tessa, you touched on it, it gives you flexibility because it opens up a range of services that you can go and look to as well. So you're not stuck in a certain process. So that's the other benefit as well.
Great, thank you, Chet. Fee, if I could come to you next, if you could introduce yourself and what does an API mean to you?
I'm Felicia, the CEO of Akoni. Akoni is a cash marketplace. We provide cash as a service to advisors, wealth managers, and to platforms. We are an API first company because we believe that clients want to be able to access data about all of their assets within one ecosystem, such as an Embark ecosystem, as an example. So from our perspective, cash has been historically a neglected asset. And part of the reason is because there was so much friction to open an account. It's just really simple. Why has cash not been managed the way other investment assets have? And it is all around that friction. And an API overcomes that friction. Obviously, an API together with a highly regulated structure overcomes that friction, but it enables us to use data which already belongs to advisors or to their clients, or advisors have permission to access that data from clients in an entirely seamless way. In a way, you'd almost imagine like, well, it's my banking data. Why can't I share it with someone? But historically, that has not been possible. And in our world, if we just take API, which is an open banking API, now clients can share that data. And that means something like an anti-money laundering check can be massively speeded up. It also means that actually clients, if they want to, can share all of their data with a platform like Embark or Akoni, and their advisor can personalize the recommendations and say, well, we see you've got this much cash, we know this about your expenses, and all of those prompts then can go to the relevant financial products, whether they are cash savings or investment products. So for us, the number one key point is around the impact on the client and the advisor. That single point of data consent is enabled through APIs. Then the second, again, for me, is around clients and advisors, is the holistic view of all of your financial assets, because really that's where we're going. All that data belongs to the client and is mandated for recommendations, from an advisor. So utilizing what's currently becoming, very public in the market. Many advisors have already obviously heard of open banking, but it's now moved towards something called open finance, where that covers a whole range of other assets, whether that includes property, and you can get APIs from the land registry, as an example. And the third point, which I think for me is worth noting around APIs, is it creates more collaboration. So just in practice, we have a number of specialists just on this call, and we each have like highly specialized areas unique to ourselves, which have a different impact on the wealth sector, on advisors, on wealth managers, on clients. And now suddenly we can all work together.
Thank you. So just before I come to you, Pete, because you're in the unlucky position of going last, and what the heck do you add to all that, right? Because that was pretty comprehensive. But what I've noted, and I'm sure I missed loads, but I thought, Chet, your point about it's nothing new. This isn't something that's new. This has been around for donkey's years, right? I really liked what you said, Tess, about a contract between two systems. It's a way to let products and services communicate. If you use the word seamless as a way to do that seamlessly. Some of the benefits I heard: remove manual processes, reduce errors, provide a holistic view of wealth, allow for better collaboration between different players in the industry. And then there were some applications mentioned, and there was lots more than I've captured here, but an AML check, back office integration, being able to have that full picture. We talked about holistic view, but these specific examples around banking data, land registry data. So Pete, can you give us a view of how does this apply to the platform, and what else do you have to add to that is amazing definition of an API?
No, that was really helpful context. It makes my slot a bit easier, I suspect. So just by way of introduction, so I'm Peter Docherty. I'm the CEO of Embark platform. I've been with Embark for 14 months. Prior to that, I was the CEO of Alliance Trust Savings. In terms of what Embark platform does, what we exist to achieve, we are the institutional aspect of the Embark group in terms of the platform space. We have a number of relationships with large advisors, but we also have white label opportunities that we offer to clients as well, which is, funnily enough, powered by a number of APIs. I think from taking the summary of what the guests have said on this call, it pretty much explains how we operate in practice. Ultimately, what does an API, how does it benefit Embark platform? It creates seamless transitions and journeys for clients and advisors, which effectively, for the type of technology, and I think you mentioned it, Heather, that the capability and innovation of certainly the the three speakers we have here, is the type of capability you wouldn't build in-house, because it would be illogical based on what we're trying to do. And ultimately what Embark Platform is trying to do is take the best participants in the market, match it to the advisor demand and ultimately the end customer demand, and utilize that expertise to plug it into our core technology, our servicing capability. But we also use APIs to talk to advisors and talk to white label partners and clients, with the APIs going in the other direction. So when you look at it through, as the webinar's called, the advisor ecosystem, APIs are absolutely critical to what we do. And I think as we move forward into a more technology-focused method of delivering financial advice and the support services that surround that, based on the current societal challenges that we have at present, I think it's the natural transition of how this sector will move as well. So I'm delighted to talk to everybody on this call. Delighted that Embark Platforms sponsoring this session, and I look forward to the debate we're going to have.
Great, thank you, and thanks for having us for this conversation. I thought that was such a great articulation of an example of that collaboration, because you talked about bringing the best players together in the market to be able to plug into the technology that you're offering, and I think that's one of the really exciting opportunities that come out of APIs, and we have some great examples on the screen today. I would say in the room, but unfortunately we're not yet. And you're right, APIs are critical to that ecosystem, which is why we're here today. So I'm going to move on to the first question. We've sort of two topics that we want to cover. The first one is around what are the challenges and opportunities or future, what does the future hold for financial advice firms? So I want to come around to each of you to get your thoughts on, what are some of the challenges that financial advisors and financial advice businesses are facing, and what are some of the opportunities and that you see looking forward? So Tess, if I could start with you again, please.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, as far as the challenges for advice firms, I don't think these are anything that's really new. I think they're the same challenges that these firms have been dealing with for years, and probably top of the list for me would be way too much paperwork. I mean, we've always been a very paper-heavy industry, and the amount of paperwork that gets sent to advisors and from advisors to their clients is vast, isn't it? And it presents a problem for advisors, but it presents perhaps more of a problem for clients, because they have stuff that's stacked up on the sideboard. It's never where they need it when they want to find it, and it's not a great experience for them, especially now consumers in their other parts of their lives, whether that's retail or travel or whatever it is, are so used to technology helping them with that. So I think paperwork is one of the biggest challenges that advisor firms are facing. And of course, there are, strides being taken towards that, particularly over the last 12 months or so, because we've been forced into using technology and working remotely more. So paper-based processes, we're getting over the fact that we need to have paper. We're starting to use e-signatures, which is, again, something that's been around for a long, long time, but all of a sudden we're all now, hang on a minute, that actually works, and we need to be doing that. And APIs obviously solve that problem too. So I think that's one of the problems. Rekeying of data, always been a problem across the industry for years and years, and still is today. So again, the more we can integrate between us, the better. I think there are some technical challenges for us technology providers to deal with as well, because it sounds simple and beautiful and easy. There's an API and you can call for data and you can post data in, and isn't that lovely? But of course there are business processes that sit behind that, and as technology providers, I think now that we are more open to talking and collaborating with each other, there are more conversations to be had around understanding each other's business processes, because that very much forms then the types of data that needs to be exchanged, whether more bulk. I'd like to see much more bulk data within APIs being exchanged, because they're very client focused quite often now. So there are some technical challenges to come around understanding what different tech providers and how they're using that data, and we've got to be careful not to put too many barriers in place as well to this. So open banking is a great example of API technology, being introduced, but it's not by any means perfect. There are still barriers in the way with open banking APIs. The consent process works, but consumers have to reconsent every 3 months. That's a barrier that they didn't have before with screen scraping technology, for example. And we use open banking. For me, it's still early days. It's not proven, but it will improve over time. So I think we're in a good place. I think we've moved on hugely. I think as technology providers, we've got over the kind of IP situation and wanting to control everything and to do everything, you know, ourselves. And we've realised that we need to kind of stick to our knitting and focus on our core competencies. And but I think there's, you know, there's a way for us to go in terms of being more open about integrating and how we, you know, how we collaborate together and understand each other's business processes. But number one, top of the list, definitely paperwork. We need to get rid of it.
Absolutely. Here I am taking notes on a piece of paper. I'm so embarrassed. But you're right.
I'm not going to pick my pen now because I'll be, you know, but that, you know, there's a huge opportunity with that as well, isn't there? And we've seen the opportunities that, you know, e-signature integrations are opening up for advisors. And, you know, one of the things we do at moneyinfo is we automate delivery of reports and documentation, and we allow people to get rid of paperwork because we're giving them that kind of peace of mind and securing all of their communication. So with challenge always comes opportunity and innovation, doesn't it? It makes us look at problems and innovate. So, you know, it's not all bad. There's some really good stuff that's happening across the industry right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So paperwork, rekeying data, and then some of the responsibilities incumbent on tech providers to move us forward. Chet, can I come to you next, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Challenges you see and opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of what I will say will have a similar flavour to what Tessa's just covered, but no harm in repeating it. I think in terms of the challenges, it's probably three key areas that I'd probably pick up on. I think, you know, the first one is the costs of giving advice. I mean, more generally, just having a support team in place in terms of, you know, administration and power planners, you've got that cost there, multiple systems that are being used at the moment as well, and manual processes, which again increases the complexity. You've got the kind of PI premium side and the FSCS levies as well, which have tended to increase over the last few years, and more so for, you know, particular areas of advice, especially around DB transfers, for example. So that's really kind of pushed or required a need for an improvement in efficiencies. And I think what we've seen in the industry is a you know, combining of businesses together to kind of try and gain some of those economies of scale, which has been successful for some. I think we have seen a use of a tech already, and that's kind of been key. And the point that Tessa made, you know, coronavirus has kind of forced the adoption of tech, which perhaps otherwise would have taken us, you know, I'm not sure if we ever would have, to be honest with you. You know, we've been set in a particular way. And I think the other benefit from a cost perspective, actually, the use of tech has allowed us to reduce travel costs as well, actually. You know, myself, even from a business perspective, I was traveling a few hours a day before, and now that time's back. You're saving the fuel, but you're saving the time as well. So there's actually some silver linings of the coronavirus in reducing costs. I mean, the second area is probably the risks associated with advice as well. And you've obviously got the compliance and regulatory risks. You know, the FCA seem to be taking a much more of a closer look when it comes to conduct of business in particular areas, again, we know, but also around accumulation of retirement income planning. But the other side, which is also important, is a reputational risk. And therefore brand now is more important than ever, especially with social media and the sharing of information. So I think, you know, risk is another key a key challenge for a lot of the businesses. And I think the third one that I wanted to pick up, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a risk for advisors per se, but it's probably a challenge around advice in general. So, you know, I think we can all accept that there's more individuals who need support with advice. I think moving forward, you know, post-pension freedoms, we've got more individuals perhaps with smaller pots, especially around retirement. Guidance isn't sufficient for them. They can't quite go and get face-to-face advice due to costs. And there's a gap to fill there. And what we've seen recently is that challenge try to be filled almost, or to be supported by digital advice or automated robo advice, whatever you want to call it. And you know, that's the solution that's been seen moving forwards. And that's going to take a bit of time. It's not straightforward. You need to have the right integrations and the right APIs and systems in place to fully digitize that process. But I think what's going to be important is how that sits alongside face-to-face advice, if you do think about digital advice moving forwards. So I think those are probably the three challenges that spring to mind for me. In terms of what the future holds, you know, there's no doubt there's going to be changes over the coming years, but with changes, it brings opportunities. You know, we've already seen improvements in tech and solutions on offer, and that's driven improvements in efficiency, but also the quality of solutions and the capabilities out there as well, which is quite important. We've seen recently, an influx of fintech type of businesses supporting advice and financial planning in general. And we've got more solution providers or tech providers now than ever before. And actually, tech is quite sexy in terms of an investment perspective. We've seen it over the last 12 months, and it's not going to die down. It's going to continue. So we can continue to expect to see improvements on tech and solutions on offer. And I think, from an advisor perspective, at least, there's going to be a greater focus on the relationship management piece. And I think that's a really important point. There's potentially more of a need to support in particular areas, and again, at retirement, in retirement, where you kind of need that ongoing management piece. It's not just giving advice and stepping away. You've got to come back and take a look. Circumstances change, economies can crash. So being able to have that relationship with a customer to help them understand, what they're going through is okay, and providing that support is going to be key to kind of manage expectations. And again, I've mentioned it, but digital advice, it's coming. From an EV perspective, we've seen so many in the industry talking about how they adopt it with existing guidance and advisor channels. So it's definitely coming. But what we can't do is replace the face-to-face advice type of piece. So what we've got to work out is how that fits together and how it ties together. And the final one is just a general increase in market opportunity. And again, I go back to COVID. In some ways, it's presented us with an opportunity across many industries, but especially in financial services. And we've seen tech being adopted. We mentioned e-signatures as an example. Would we have seen that shift otherwise? Probably not. Why would you not just continue the way things have been? So I think there's, real gains in terms of efficiency and reduction in manual processes from the use of tech. I think the other benefit actually is that from an advisor perspective, now that you don't necessarily have to see your customers or your clients face to face, it potentially opens you up to access to a broader market as well. And that's another interesting point. So, I think the expectations of individuals have changed as well. So hopefully actually there's a positive there that you can go broader than your local geographical location as well. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to, I think, from a future perspective, and lots of opportunities coming our way.
Perfect, thank you. What you said about relationship was so important, because we tend to talk about technology a lot, but also technology can enable people to have those deeper relationships with their customers. And it's one of the most important differentiators for financial advisors from some of the digital propositions. I thought that was really, really important to raise that. Thank you. If I could come to you next, challenges and opportunities.
Thanks, Heather. And obviously preceded by very comprehensive challenges and opportunities by Chet and Tessa. Much appreciated. So I'll just touch on a few which reinforce a little bit of what they are both saying. So for us, one of the things that we see with advisors, because we are an additional asset class which has been neglected historically, is that proving value. And it comes time and time again that on an ongoing basis, advisors have to show why should clients be using them. And this is partly because there's a range of fintech tools which can auto-prompt them to save money, to invest money, to not spend as much on beer, a whole range of tools that they can use if they are, so inclined. So one of the reasons that we are very engaged with the wealth sector is because of the fact that in times of uncertainty, cash tends to be one of those leading assets, because everyone is waiting. They're waiting to see what they feel like, that magic moment to make a decision to go into the market or to go into property or another asset. And while they're waiting, they, are holding cash. And during that period, historically, they were earning nothing on the cash. And this was pre-COVID. So now this type of environment where suddenly everything, like Chet is saying, is digital, just as a broader market opportunity, everything is digital. So you need to be able to offer that added value for an additional asset. And that in turn leads into more what you can do that shows value. And that also comes to reflecting in the fees. So actually most of the advisors who we deal with, they don't even want to take any fee from a client for the cash, because they see it as a gateway asset that will lead in turn to other related investment decisions. Obviously, we still do have advisors who we work with who have some sort of earnings around it, but we're seeing more and more of a trend that they they just want to add value to their clients' lives because it's a low margin product. So that's one component that we see repetitively. Then the other is around future solutions around intergenerational wealth. This obviously tends to apply for, the high net worth side, or ultra high net worth as well, and is very pronounced because we're seeing this big shift in wealth that's underway, and it leads into the same links into how do we service the youth? Because if you have a solution around intergenerational wealth, that means you have to have digital tools for that younger generation. And the younger generation may not want to interact in the same way, as a white glove type proposition presents itself. And again, that comes back to both what Chet and Tessa have already said, is having a wide range of tools that they can also access. And that also links to ensuring advisors can provide solutions for new business. And obviously, like you mentioned, Pete, the white label solutions that Embark provides, for me, touch on that whole area, because those types of platforms provide the retail market with a wide range of very youth-oriented decision-making tools. And we think there's going to be more and more of these tools where, we're all going to be prompted around how much money are we spending on Amazon this week and what else we should be doing with our funds. Another key aspect of that is something which, Chet, I think you mentioned, the at-retirement, post-retirement tools, which we haven't seen much of yet. And we think that all the solutions in the financial advisor market are going to start to grow or mature into offering decumulation solutions. For instance, and this is really simple on the cash side, one of the things that we offer or that we've seen is like a decumulation card. So, dear Bob or dear Joe, you paid all your bills this month. You've got X amount, you can take the grandkids out for dinner or have a massive family holiday in post-COVID times. So that is all prompted by really simple tools around open banking and open finance. And we don't even understand why has that not happened, where a client wants to hold cash and just needs some sort of tool, an Embark card perhaps, or whatever it may be, to help them along that journey. Everything is available, even our platform provides that kind of solution and that can service that market. So those are the kind of challenges and opportunities that we're seeing with all the data. There's one thing which I thought to mention, because it links to both the youth and the trends in investment, obviously around ESG, which is always a very trendy topic every time we talk to advisors. And what's interesting for us is that we obviously offer banks as our product providers, and most of those do not provide ESG products in the same way the investment world does. But we're seeing an increasing trend that even platform and advisor partners are saying, what do banks say about their environmental or other values? And can we help our clients make judgment calls on where they place cash on that basis? And so we think over the next year or two, we will see increasing data coming out from banks that enable that kind of selection as another opportunity, in the same way we see with funds at the moment.
Great, thank you. Really great opportunities in that digital transformation that we've seen, just allowing people to be able to serve that next generation. I think that was a really, really important thing to mention. Pete, can I come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've had a pretty comprehensive overview of some of the challenges we've got, but to be honest, it's probably, if you take those challenges and translate them into the opportunities that naturally flow from it, I would hope that's where the Embark platform opportunity comes as well. But just kind of take this back as well to the purpose of the session as well, which is, what does the advisor ecosystem look like in 2025? Embark platform is 5 years old, so we were established in 2016, and even when you look through that journey, an awful lot has changed and an awful lot has happened. Never mind if you look over the last 12 months. And if you look at 2025, you say, right, what's the demands ultimately from clients on their advisors, and therefore on platforms, and therefore on the services and API technology that we can utilize. And ultimately, the DNA, if you like, of Embark platform was high levels of automation. that was something, having the advantage of effectively establishing a new platform from scratch. You've got a vision of what you're trying to achieve, and as much as that has been, how can we avoid those touch points of manual intervention, and that's benefited us through this current situation. I also wrote down notes on a piece of paper, Heather, and then I got self-conscious and wrote it on my laptop instead. So I'm progressing. I'm progressing alongside our 2025 ambition. In terms of what some of the challenges are, I've got a couple of thoughts just to add to what's been said. I won't repeat what the other speakers have covered. There's a question about demand, ultimately from advisors and then separately to clients, and then also about adoption. So where the demand piece may exist, how do we get into a position where we create a solution, whether it be proposition or operational for advisors and clients, that's attractive to the majority instead of the minority, because neither Embark platform or API developers necessarily want to do anything that involves huge amounts of effort for very little, if you like, impact, or drilling through that advisor base to make sure you get best value for the advisor, because ultimately it's got to be invested in. So there's that part about demand, and then secondly is the adoption piece, which is once you've got it, how do you make best use of it? So there's some of the challenges, because all the stuff we're talking about is really exciting, but can also come with some concerns about how do I utilise that in practice. And actually, if we then reflect on what we just discussed about, look at the situation we find ourselves in terms of a technology-driven situation. My kids are downstairs doing Teams meetings at school, and they're 8 and 10 years old. They're going to come to the workplace in 15 years' time, or however long it takes them, and all this technology is already going to have been replaced. But even if they go on an internship when they're 17, they're going to know what they're doing, which is just beyond belief. If you stand back and think 12 months ago, it was YouTube, now it's Microsoft Teams. But anyway, I digress. So for me, I'm looking at it and thinking as well, how do we get consistency across the sector? Because one of the points that was made was data integrity and the ability for different platforms to interact with API providers like the guys on here and others, but also in the back office of the business where a lot of the noise. So I think we talk about how do we make the platform look like the swan on the lake, where the legs are going 10 to the dozen, but on the surface it's a perfect calm lake. And that's where we have to get some focus around how do we ensure throughout the sector that actually there's a consistency around data to inform that, for example, transfers process, if I use that, which is also a push from not only advisors but also regulators, etc. And then the key part for me is demographics, and I think it was mentioned, Felicia, you stole my thunder there, but to be fair, it was right at the end, so I wasn't too disappointed, which is what do we do around demographics? So the reality is 2025, we're another 5 years along. The behavioural instincts, if you want to call it that, of savers and advisors is going to be different in 5 years' time, significantly different to what it was 5 years ago and what it is today. So how do we align to those expectations? And then certainly look beyond that. As I said about my kids, there's going to be an expectation now. This is going to have to be delivered in a format and a method that's consistent now with what people expect from a technology provision perspective. So how does the platform provider, such as ourselves, sit in the middle of that to get the best solution, not only for the advisor, white label, but also for the customer who's got to digest these services, for want of a better term. So they're the kind of challenges for me. I don't think anything there is alarming. I just think it needs focus by the platform provider, by the API technology solutions, and also by the advisor on behalf of their client. And I think once we nail that dynamic, we've got huge opportunities to succeed.
Right, thank you. I think it's a really interesting shift from, we used to talk about the mum test. Is it easy enough for my mum to use it? And now is it sophisticated enough for my kid to use it? And maybe we've shifted, because I haven't heard the mum test in a few years. You heard it here first. The kid test. Thanks, Pete. Can I do really rapid fire just to wrap up? 1 minute or less. If you can do it in 30 seconds, even better. How do you see the model changing? Pete, you first.
Okay, so from my perspective, I think all this collaboration will lead to more personalized tools around savings habits. And that will help us to plug what I see as quite a large savings gap in the market, especially in the retail space. You know, at the smaller ticket size, like Chet mentioned, currently non-advised, are they going to grow into part advised, and how will that work? And much more automation.
Chet, you next.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think very simply from my perspective, at least, we'll just see a deeper link across the various services across financial planning. There's probably just very quickly 2 key areas. I think a better link across the solutions and the tool set. So if you're talking about risk profiling, accumulation, decumulation, capacity for loss, ESG, optimization of assets, cash flow planning, all of that being consistent in terms of how data is used and the projections that are carried out. But I think taking it a step back to a point that Peter mentioned around the consistency, I think we will see, putting the customer first, the ability for them to take guidance, face-to-face advice and digital advice. I think that's going to be a key thing for us to try and adapt to in the market, because ultimately, if you put the customer first, we want them to get the service that best supports their need, and therefore the link between the different platforms, advisor group, CRM system, tool providers, that's all going to have to be there to make this a seamless journey for the end customer. So the next 5 years, I think, are going to be key whilst we go through that transition.
Perfect. Thank you. Tessa, a minute or less.
Well, for advice firms, I think they will continue to thrive. I think I strongly believe there will always be a need for advice. There's always a requirement for that personal touch. We'll see a return to face-to-face advice to some extent, whether that's face-to-face via video or in an office or somebody's home. I think people still really, really value that. So I don't think technology will ever take that over. But we will see, and are seeing already, a change in the way that advice firms and wealth managers work with their clients, so that technology helps facilitate that communication, does some of the heavy lifting, takes out some of the admin, and of course then enables them to broaden their reach. And we're already seeing, intergenerational wealth opportunities, connecting families together on a piece of technology so that they can, share stuff with their kids at university in Edinburgh who aren't going to go to Dad's Advisor down in Surrey, but they are going to use Dad's Advisor's app on their smartphone. So I think, more transparency, but certainly I think there will always be a need for high touch advice services that we're seeing today, and I think they'll continue to thrive.
Right. Thank you. Pete, last word for you.
No, thanks, Heather. So again, I'm probably just going to repeat what's been said, but try and put a slightly different twist on it. So I think, the context in which we had this discussion was the advisor ecosystem in 2025. I think what's probably happened in the last 12 months, we've probably accelerated that by 5 years in terms of what the expectations are at the moment. So those firms that are able to talk coherently to APIs and integrate them properly into their business are probably already at an advantage. I think we look at behavioural traits and the instinctive behaviours of investors and advisors and the needs of their consumers, which we mentioned earlier. It's what's the end customer looking for and how can the advisor support that. I suspect we've probably accelerated that journey to where we probably thought we would be in 2025, just coming a lot earlier. It might already be here, to be honest, as well. And I think we're probably going to see, and it's good news, I'll finish on a high for my guest speakers on this one as well, which is probably, in all honesty, the expectation is going to increase the demand on API technology, both for the established participants, such as people on this meeting, but also for new entrants into the market. And obviously fintech is key to that. We're right in the middle of it. We sit between everybody. We have to see that as an opportunity and pursue it. And embrace it, and that's certainly from an Embark platform perspective what we're looking to do. So yeah, I think this has been a really thought-provoking session. I've enjoyed the inputs of my fellow speakers, and I look forward to seeing how we can work together in the future in terms of delivering on those objectives.
Great. Thank you, Pete, and thanks to the team at Embark platform for having us today. Thanks for you watching the Advisor Ecosystem 2025 webinar. Thank you, Tessa, Chet, and Fee, our fantastic, absolutely fantastic panel. Really thought-provoking. You heard it here first. It's the kid test. The digital transformation we've seen has been like time traveling. So little did you know, you've been sitting in your house, but you've been time traveling for the last year, which is great to know we've been doing something useful and productive, isn't it? The other thing I took away was just the importance of relationship and the role of the advisor moving forward. There's great opportunities with fintech, great opportunities for innovation, but the value of that personal relationship doesn't go away. Thanks very much to Embark. Thanks for you watching. See you later.